Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's virtual briefing, Breakthroughs in Cancer Care, Expanding CAR-T Access. I'm Meghan Gutierrez, CEO of the Lymphoma Research Foundation, and I'm pleased to be with you and to serve as today's moderator. CAR-T therapy is one of the most transformative advances in cancer care in recent history. But despite its extraordinary potential, too many patients still struggle to access this therapy because of complex referral systems, treatment delays, or geographic limitations. Today's conversation will help ground this issue in real-world experience. We will hear from two leading physicians, as well as an amazing patient whose story underscores what's at stake when access to care is delayed or denied. We are especially grateful to the Health Care Innovation Caucus and to Representatives Barrett and Kelly for their leadership in convening this conversation. And we're pleased to be able to join today by Congressman Mike Kelly, who will share why CAR-T access is a priority for the caucus and for his work in Congress. Finally, we'll have time for Q&A after we hear from our presenters. Please use the Q&A function for any questions that arise during the discussion, and our presenters will do their best to respond either via chat or verbally during the Q&A session. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Congressman Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania. Congressman Kelly represents Pennsylvania's 16th Congressional District and serves as co-chair of the bipartisan Health Care Innovation Caucus. A longtime advocate for patient-focused solutions, Representative Kelly has supported efforts to advance breakthrough therapies, reduce health disparities, and expand access to life-saving treatments, especially for those patients in rural and underserved communities. Welcome, Congressman Kelly.
First of all, thank you for doing this. And the least important person to listen to right now is a member of Congress. I just want to let you. I also serve. I'm a Hyundai dealer on Hyundai Motor America's Hope on Wheels, which is an effort to eliminate childhood cancer. And so far, we've raised between Hyundai Motor America and Hyundai dealers, we've raised almost over $250 million for research. The only thing I would just say to you right now, look, you all are doing all the hard work, and the rest of the country is the beneficiary of it. The one thing I can tell you now, because Dr. Barrett and I feel the same way on this, anything we can do when it comes to funding and the consistency of that, and the fact that we're always going to be on board, so we take off any of the things that you may be concerned about. Say, listen, how long can we keep doing this? And is somebody going to say, oh no, we're not going to do that anymore? I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you're doing. Our goal at Hyundai Hope and Wheels is to make sure that no parent or anybody ever has to hear that their child has cancer. What you're doing is absolutely the finest work that can be done, because it's dealing with the most important thing in our lives right now, and that is to keep more people alive. So thank you for what you're doing. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm actually an automobile dealer, but I can tell you this. What you do is essential to the future of our country. So thank you so much for doing it. Thanks for including me. I'm really interested to hear what you all have to say. You're the experts. So thank you for including me. And just keep in mind, Dr. Barrett and I are on the same page with this. Anything we can do, please don't hesitate to call. If you think in some way we've lost our way, we will not do that. Thank you so much. Thanks again for including me.
Thank you so much, Congressman Kelly. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to this afternoon's distinguished speakers, Dr. Jason Westin of MD Anderson Cancer Center and Dr. Brandon Blue of West Cancer Center, and patient advocate Laurie Adami. Dr. Jason Westin is a professor and director of clinical research at MD Anderson Cancer Center's Department of Lymphoma and Myeloma in Houston, Texas. He is one of the top CAR-T cell clinical trial doctors in the United States and a member of both the CAR-T Vision Project Steering Committee and the American Society of Clinical Oncology's Board of Directors. Dr. Blue is an assistant member and clinical instructor in the Department of Malignant Hematology at Moffitt Cancer Center. He earned his medical degree from Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee. He completed an internal medical residency in the Department of Medicine at Washington University School of Medicine and a hematology-oncology fellowship at St. Louis University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri. Dr. Blue completed a blood and marrow transplant and cellular immunotherapy fellowship at Moffitt Cancer Center. Dr. Blue's clinical interests include treatment of plasma cell disorders and evaluation of patients pre- and post-stem cell and bone marrow transplant. His research interests include reducing health disparities and improving health outcomes for plasma cells. Finally, you will hear from an extraordinary story from an extraordinary person, Laurie Adami. After a 12-year battle with stage 4 follicular non-Hodgkin lymphoma, Laurie found her path to remission through a groundbreaking CAR T-cell therapy clinical trial. Thank you again to all of our speakers for being here with us this afternoon. I'd now like to turn the program over to Dr. Westin.
Great. Thank you so much, Meg. We appreciate that. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be here to share with you why we care about CAR T-cell therapy. What is CAR T-cell therapy, and why should the Health Care Innovation Caucus care about this? And thanks to Representative Kelly and Representative Barra for your leadership here. We appreciate you. So I'm going to try and advance the slides. All right. So I think it sometimes helps to start off with the story. And like any good story, we have a villain and a hero. And in this situation, our villain, as we've heard from Representative Kelly, is one of the worst things out there, which is cancer. And that unfortunately affects too many Americans, too many people in our lives, too many loved ones that are stricken with cancer. And when we have that happen to somebody that we care about, we want to have the best weapons possible to try and fight that. We want the hero to punch the bad guy in the face and to get rid of that cancer. And so we've got our hero and we've got our villain here. And in this situation, the villain, cancer, is being fought by a brand new, amazing therapy called CAR T-cell therapy, chimeric antigen receptor T-cell therapy. And I'll describe a little bit more about what that means. But in this situation, the monster is not some abstract ChatGPT image, but is a tumor that shows up in our patient's body. So somebody diagnosed with a new tumor, and for our purposes today, we'll talk about blood cancers being the common tumor that's used for CAR T-cell therapies. For a patient with blood cancer who's appropriate for CAR T-cell, they undergo a special collection of their blood. That blood is then modified to have the cells, their own immune cells, to be weaponized, to be something that's now able to see the cancer, to fight the sheep, to see the sheep in wolf's clothing and to fight against the cancer. And those cells are then infused back into the same patient, and that tumor now fades away. This sounds like science fiction, to be able to take somebody's own immune system and weaponize it in a new way to be able to fight the cancer. But this is a reality, and it's something that's been approved by the FDA for now going on 7-8 years, and is a part of my daily practice. Same for Dr. Blue. This is something that is a routine standard of care at certain cancer centers across the US, but unfortunately, not enough patients have access to it. So digging into the top part here, the part where it says cells are modified, I want to show a little bit more about what that means. This is not science fiction or magic. This is reality. So what happens when the blood is taken out of the patient who has cancer, and this is not for every cancer, but certain cancers that this works well in. And in my clinic, I treat patients with lymphoma. So the patient with lymphoma has the blood collected, and we identify a type of immune cell called a T cell. This T cell undergoes a genetic modification. There's a DNA insertion procedure, which is done in the lab. That then causes these T cells, these are again the patient's T cells, to now express a new surface marker, something called a chimeric antigen receptor. That's basically a receptor that can see the cancer. Those cells are infused back into the patient, and they can now bind to the tumor cells, whereas prior to this weaponization, they could not see the wolf in sheep's clothing. That binding allows the T cells to kill the cancer, to recruit other CAR T cells, to recruit other regular T cells, and to destroy tumors, which can be miraculous for some of our patients who might have otherwise died. CAR T cells are part of cancer immunotherapy, and this has been something that's been featured in many of our most important publications for now going on more than a decade. But we think it's the next wave in cancer immunotherapy, the true innovation of taking the immune system, nature's defense against infections, against foreign invaders into our body, and turning it against one of the worst invaders, which is cancer, your own cells turning against your body. And in a clinical trial that I had the opportunity to lead, we showed that CAR T-cell therapy was actually superior to standard therapy. This is a survival curve showing the percentage of patients with aggressive relapsed lymphomas, what percentage of them survived, were still alive over a period of time. And in a randomized phase 3 trial, CAR T-cell therapy was clearly the winner over chemotherapy, and now is our preferred treatment for patients with relapsed lymphomas. Not all lymphomas, but aggressive types definitely can benefit, as well as can some slow-growing types. The point being, this is now a standard of care reality for many of our patients across the United States who are stricken with certain types of cancer. But the reason we're holding the webinar today is not every patient can receive access to CAR T-cell. And part of the reasons, which Dr. Blue will go into in a bit more during his section of the talk, is because CAR T-cells are complicated, both in terms of their delivery, but also managing potential side effects. If this was something that was just the hero punching the bad guy in the face, that'd be great, and we could do this for every patient. Unfortunately, sometimes side effects can be a significant barrier for CAR T cells, and the side effects can be complicated and difficult to manage, basically requiring specialty care. And we don't have to get into the background biology of these side effects, but suffice to say there are unique side effects that CAR T cell therapy has. Something called cytokine release syndrome, CRS, something called neurologic toxicities, or ICANS. These require specialty management and expertise, a comprehensive team approach to be able to head these off before they get to be serious and or potentially life-threatening if not managed well. And this presents one of the barriers, is that we need to have centers that are set up to have appropriate experience and equipment to manage these side effects. Today in the United States, despite this now having been approved in certain contexts for 7 or 8 years, only 2 out of 10 eligible patients who could benefit from a CAR T-cell therapy are receiving a CAR T-cell therapy. This is in the richest country in the history of the world. We would love to be able to do better and to try and increase access to CAR T-cell therapy for our patients. We're trying hard to make this a reality. And Meg and I are both part of a CAR T-cell vision steering committee, which is basically a group of experts of global CAR T-cell treating doctors, patient advocates, payer groups, trying to work together on the difficult issues that prevent our patients from receiving CAR T-cell therapy. And we've received a lot of support. Many different cancer organizations, many different accreditation societies, many different treating centers have joined on to this important effort. And for those that would like to read more information, at the link at the top of this slide, cartvision.com, there's a comprehensive white paper that goes into a lot of these issues. So back to our analogy that we started off with at the beginning, if the hero is not there, bad things can happen when the villain is able to run free. And in this ChatGPT picture, we've got the house in the background, and there's a fire in the fireplace with the smoke coming out, and that villain is not opposed. The cancer is going to wreak havoc if we don't have the right treatment for our patient. So if we get our hero to show up, we can protect our patients, our loved ones, fellow Americans, from the dread cancers that could take their lives if they don't receive access to this breakthrough therapy. So my takeaways from my section of the talk are that CAR T cells are a true breakthrough in every sense of the word. They can train patients' own cells to fight against their cancer. They cure more patients than previous treatments, but they're difficult to deliver, and that means we need greater support to expand access. And with that, I will hand the presentation over to Dr. Blue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Westin. And I think one thing to remember, while a lot of the breakthroughs in CAR T are traditionally for blood cancers, as he mentioned, this is only the beginning. So what's going to happen is that there will be more and more indications and more cancers that will be using this technology. And so while, yes, a lot of the things we will be talking about is currently for those blood cancers, in several years, you will insert the breast cancers, the lung cancers, the colon cancers, and those things will just continue to compound. We'll go to the next slide. The thing that just makes it very difficult is that there's several barriers that are preventing that hero from trying to punch the villain. And so we'll go through and talk through some of those barriers that are really happening and plaguing us, because again, This is something that we see every day. And so we're trying to make sure that more and more people can actually have access to this breakthrough technology. Next slide. The issue is that it's not one size fits all, and it's very complicated. As you can imagine, with any new technology, unfortunately, there are certain financial aspects that sometimes can be prohibitive for patients to get this therapy. We know that there's issues based on the physician-related barriers, but also some of the patient-related barriers. And so I wanted to just make sure that this is likely a combination effect, and that if you solve all the patient-related barriers, we're still going to have healthcare-related problems. If you solve all the physician or healthcare-related problems, there's still patient-related issues. And so I just want to talk a little bit of time here and just let people know exactly what are exactly some of the things that we deal with. The first thing that I think is super important is we do know that even from a healthcare system, all doctors aren't perfect, right? And we do know that there are knowledge gaps in the efficacy and safety of CAR T cell therapy. One of the things that makes it difficult is that no patient can typically come to me or Dr. Westin if maybe their local doctor did not know about CAR T cell therapy or did not necessarily send them. And so sometimes it becomes difficult because you might ask a patient and say, where have you been for these last several years? Like, what was a barrier for you to come and see me? It's like, well, my doctor never sent me, and they never got that referral to a what we call a tertiary cancer center. And so sometimes that becomes a real barrier for patients, is just getting the consult to even discuss CAR T therapy. I think another thing that is important to know is that while many of these academic and big centers do CAR T very regularly, a lot of times they're at a distance from someone's house. And so what happens is that we have patients who actually have to temporarily relocate to one of these big centers. Well, when they go back to their home center, their doctors have to understand what could be some of those potential issues or side effects that may still be lingering months after this therapy. If doctors are uncomfortable, sometimes you can imagine that that could mean more hesitancy with sending those referrals. As I mentioned before, even just being late or not knowing when the appropriate time to refer a patient for CAR T cell therapy. One of the things that gets very complicated when it comes to these cellular therapies and these new treatments is that we typically don't let patients go through this journey alone. And what that means is they need a caregiver. Well, I'll tell you that unfortunately, not everyone has the social support to be able to lean on someone during their time of need. And so, because the complication rate can sometimes happen very quickly, if it's 2 a.m. and this person has some confusion, we need someone who's reliable to say, hey, let's get you to one of these big centers so that we can actually get therapy. If that person were to be by themselves, unfortunately, that could lead to delays in their care or them being mismanaged. We also know that from a patient standpoint, that this sounds a lot like sci-fi, right? This sounds like something off of Star Wars or Star Trek. And so sometimes patients are just very hesitant to say, I don't really know about this using my cells technology. What does that exactly mean? And so we have to kind of really break down some of these barriers, but typically we're able to do that with education. Sometimes we also know that not all cancers are equal. There are some cancers that are running 100 miles an hour, while others are doing the speed limit. How do we balance doing the same treatment for different cancers that are growing at different speeds? And so sometimes those things can become very difficult to manage, which is why typically you need someone with expertise and someone like Dr. Westin and I who do this on a day-to-day basis. And then lastly, as we'll talk through on the next couple slides, is that again, the main thing that I think can also create a barrier is that it does typically require some type of travel to one of these big academic centers. Next slide. And so, as I mentioned before, there are several indications or several cancers that someone could use for CAR T. One of the ones that I have in this example here is one of the common cancers, something known as multiple myeloma, which is a common indication for CAR T cell therapy. You can see that in the eastern and southern part of the United States, where we look at the cases per 100,000 in states such as Florida, or even if we look at the Northeast, like Congressman Kelly, you can see that there are several densely populated areas where the cancer prevalence is just extremely high. As we kind of go throughout the Midwest, as well as the western part of America, you can see that things get a little bit more sparse. But just know that there's certain sections of the South, as well as the East and Northeast, where we see very heavily, densely populated areas where this cancer is very and highly prevalent. Which means that if we're only doing 2 out of every 10 patients who potentially could be eligible, imagine how many thousands and millions of Americans who really are not benefiting from this therapy. Next slide. And so we were actually able to track what the drive time looks like in drive time to the nearest, what we call academic treatment center, or the cellular therapy center of excellence, okay? So again, you can see that with this kind of dark blue area, you can see that there's, again, places in the South as well as the Northeast, which, as I just mentioned, are places with the most highly densely populated areas where patients' drive time just to get to us is over an hour, sometimes 2+ hours. Okay. And so, unfortunately, what this means is that if you have that barrier, meaning that the interstate is really the barrier, then unfortunately there's so many people that we could be helping that we're not able to help just due to the distance. Next slide. And I want to just talk about how access is important. We know that there's differences based off of how much access someone has to healthcare. Well, one of the great equalizers that we have in our country is our Veterans Healthcare Administration, meaning that pretty much across the United States, as long as you're a veteran with certain benefits, then you could kind of qualify for these Veteran Affairs benefits, which I think is fantastic. Well, what we learned was that if you were to put someone into the VA system and have the same access as anyone else, then we do know that some of the disparities and some of the differences that are traditionally noticed with private payers, it actually goes away. So you can see here that these slides that are traditionally very separated come together and let us know that if all things are equal, meaning that if drive times are equal, if patients are able to get referrals to the CAR T, that their outcomes and overall survival actually may be the same. And so I think that's really what we want in America, is to say, hey, I don't want someone to die just because they live 2 hours away. It's like, no, I want to make sure that you're getting the best therapy and you're getting the right therapy on time. And so with that, I want to just kind of kick it over to Laurie, who's going to talk more about her individualized journey, but just know that there is hope if we were to achieve equal access. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Laurie Adami. In 2006, at the age of 46, I was diagnosed with incurable stage 4 follicular non-Hodgkin lymphoma, the second most common type of lymphoma in the United States. At the time, I was the president of a financial software company based in Los Angeles. I was married and the mom of a young boy in kindergarten. At my diagnosis 19 years ago, there was only one approved treatment for bulky and difficult cancer like mine, an antibody and chemo combo, which I did. Unfortunately, this treatment did not result in a complete remission, and I had to quickly go back into treatment as my cancer was growing like wildfire. Between 2006 and 2018, for 12 continuous years, I was in nonstop treatment. During this time, I received 7 different lines of treatment, which included 3 clinical trials. The first 6 treatments only bought me time. They never put me in complete remission. I was lucky to live in Los Angeles and have top quality health insurance and disability benefits through my work. I was treated at 4 large cancer research centers during this time with 4 different specialist oncologists. When an oncologist told me there was nothing left for me, I moved on and sought out new opinions, new oncologists, and new clinical trials. My son gave me loads of motivation to stay alive. He ended up spending his entire elementary, middle, and high school years with a mom in treatment for cancer. In 2012, 6 years into my cancer journey, I learned about CAR T therapy via the brief film Fire with Fire, the Emily Whitehead story. I was stunned to learn this new therapy used the patient's own T cells, a part of our immune system customized for each patient. This was different than all the treatments I had had to date, pills and infusion, made in a factory, one brutal size fits all. I thought to myself, this more elegant approach just had to work better. Unfortunately, it took 6 more years for CAR T to be in an FDA-approved clinical trial for my cancer diagnosis. I was lucky as I had a skilled hematology oncologist specializing in lymphoma who knew all the options and kept me alive and going, just never cancer-free. I had to be content with stable disease, but every single treatment I received had debilitating side effects. One treatment, my 5th line of treatment, caused Crohn's disease, and as a result, I was unable to leave my house for months at a time. Finally, in spring 2018, I received word a CAR T clinical trial, Kite Pharmaceuticals Zuma-5, was opening at UCLA for follicular and other indolent lymphomas. There would be 5 patients in the trial at UCLA, and I would be patient number 1. Let's go ahead now and please put up my PET scan, my PET CT image. Great, thank you. I'm not sure how many of you in the audience know how to read a PET scan image. These 2 images come directly from the UCLA PET scanner at the Westwood Ronald Reagan Hospital. The image on the left is the baseline PET image done on July 9th, 2018, just 1 week prior to the receipt of my CAR T cells. Those of you who know how to read PET images will be horrified at this image, as all the black spots are cancer tumors in my head and neck, bone marrow, groin, underarms, and abdominal cavity. It was estimated I had over 8 pounds of tumor burden. I had a massive tumor pressing on my right kidney, threatening kidney failure. My oncologist told me if the CAR T didn't work right away, a stent would need to be placed in my kidney to prevent kidney failure. And this image on the left was after a debulking chemo to try to shrink my cancer before I got my CAR T cells back. Sadly, the debulking chemo did nothing except cause me to lose my hair for the 3rd time in 12 years. My cancer was very clever, very refractory, and had already come back after 6 rough treatments. If CAR T didn't work, I was likely dead in less than 40 days. So on July 16th, 2018, I received my CAR T at UCLA, which coincidentally was also the 24th anniversary of when I met my husband. 1 month later, I was rescanned to discover the image on the right. The only black areas lighting up the image on the right are normal liver and kidney function. I was told I was in a complete remission for the first time since my diagnosis in 2006. My cancer was finally gone. CAR T was the magic I needed, and it came just in time. It took me a long time to believe I was finally cancer-free after 12 years and $3 million worth of other failed treatments, which gave me numerous difficult side effects, which I live with to this day. But I'm alive, and for that, I have immense gratitude to the researchers at the NIH, the NCI, and at university labs all over the United States who made these breakthroughs. Sadly, research cuts at these institutions are closing down trials, and I know several patients who are being negatively impacted as a result. My son, who was in kindergarten when I was diagnosed, is now 25 years old. Thanks to CAR T coming just in time, I was able to send him off to college in Washington, D.C., and after graduating, he became gainfully employed in the district where he lives today. I am now 7 years in complete remission post-CAR T and believed cured from follicular lymphoma, which is still considered incurable. The trial sponsor, Kite Pharma, a division of Gilead Sciences, recently released the long-term study data from my 2018 CAR-T clinical trial, and the results are like nothing else compared to old-line chemotherapy, stem cell transplants, small molecule drugs, and even bispecific antibodies. Of the 160 follicular patients in my CAR-T trial, there was an overall response rate of 95%, and over 80% were in a complete remission. And now, in long-term follow-up, nearly 70% of us, 70%, remain in complete remission and have required no additional treatment. I was lucky to get CAR-T in a clinical trial when I did, but to date, only a small number of patients in the US have received CAR-T. This is a function of lack of awareness in the public, in the patient and public community, poor health insurance plans, and lack of awareness in community oncology practices, where the bulk of patients in the US continue to be in treatment. I was treated at large cancer research centers only with lymphoma specialists. Community practices have been doing chemo and bone marrow or stem cell transplant since the 70s. So there is an entrenched industry existing around these therapies. Most practitioners in community oncology practices are general oncologists and not specialists, and thus don't have the knowledge to even know about CAR-T. Many believe CAR-T is too expensive a therapy, but compared to allogeneic stem cell transplant, it's a bargain and much less risky to the patient. CAR-T is a one-time therapy, one and done, and most patients will only experience 5 to 10 days of mild side effects. More and more patients are receiving CAR-T outpatient, which greatly reduces the cost. If only I could have received it as second or third line of treatment instead of seventh. The amount of money spent on my cancer treatments would have been $3 million less. But I am here and I am very grateful, and I'm always open to questions, and I do lots of volunteer patient advocacy. So please feel free to reach out to me anytime. And if you Google the words Laurie and CAR-T, you can learn more about my story. Thank you for letting me share my experience.
Thank you so much. This image is just extraordinary, Laurie, no matter how many times I see it. I want to thank all of our speakers again and invite them to come back on camera. It looks like we already have several questions from our audience, so I will kick us off. It looks like the first question logged here are for Doctors Westin and Blue, and the question is, what gives you the most hope right now when it comes to the future of CAR-T therapy?
I would just say the biggest hope for me is that we have the technology to be able to, at this point, use CAR-T for multiple different cancers. Right now, it's very commonly used for lymphoma, very commonly used for leukemia, very commonly used for multiple myeloma. And that list of number of cancers that it's being used for changes every year. And so I think that's the biggest hope, is that this is great technology and it works really well. We just need to kind of continue to get more and more people involved in it.
And Dr. Westin, same question.
Sure, be happy to. I agree with Dr. Blue. I'm excited about that. I think that this is exactly why the Healthcare Innovation Caucus should exist, is to innovate and do things like CAR T cell and to scale both the current CAR T cells to more people, but as Dr. Blue mentioned, invest in research so that we can grow this into other cancers and take on bigger challenges with more common diseases like lung cancer, prostate cancer, other cancers that are more common than some of the blood cancers we're talking about today. I'm excited about CAR T cells being even greater in terms of their use for patients with blood cancers and not being used as a relapsed refractory therapy after having multiple prior chemotherapies, as just the way that Laurie described, but if it could be moved to earlier lines of treatment. And there are clinical trials that are evaluating that. In my research, we do a lot of trials for patients with aggressive lymphomas, and there are studies seeing if this could even be an initial treatment for patients with aggressive lymphomas. So I think the sky is the limit for CAR T cell therapy, and I'm very excited to see where this goes.
And we have a question here for you, Laurie. What advice would you give to a patient who is just learning about CAR T and wondering if it might be a right option for them?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's largely a function of where they've heard about it from. If they're hearing about it from their oncologist who is familiar and is comfortable with the therapy, I think, and they're in a good set place to explore CAR T. But if they're hearing about it, say from another patient, whatnot, and ask their doctor about it, their doctor may not be aware of it. And at that point, I always encourage patients to try to reach a lymphoma specialist or a leukemia specialist or multiple myeloma, or to reach out to an organization like the Lymphoma Research Foundation, where that patient can get support with referrals to other doctors who can assist them and can also give those patients the ability to speak to other patients on the road ahead of them. I think the issue now is that not a lot of people are hearing about it because there has been such a dearth of information. But, and I do know I've spoken to patients who've heard about it and gone to their community oncologist, and their community oncologist has refused to do it and said, "Oh, I'm not doing that, it'll kill you." And I said, "Well, what are they going to do?" "Oh, stem cell transplant." And I said, "Well, I mean, look at that. That's not without risk." So I think it's very important for a patient to see an expert to the extent they can, and if not, to get connected with through a nonprofit with an expert at a larger center that can provide much more information.
Thank you. Our next question is actually for all three of our panelists. If you could remove one barrier tomorrow to help more patients access CAR T, what would it be?
Laurie, do you want to start?
Well, I'll tell you what I would do. I would do a giant campaign to raise awareness in this country of this incredible therapy. No one knows about it. The CAR T companies are commercially competing with one another. So there's been a real dearth of information in the public but I think if there's more of an education of the public and the public knew about it, they would demand this treatment, and we would all have to figure out how to deliver it in a timely way. So I think that's the biggest barrier right now, is that it's very few people know about it and have any idea what it is. I talk to people, I'm 7 years out, even people that I'm close to that still can't believe, wait, what did you have again? And how did it work again? It sounds like Frankenstein still. So I think we have a lot more to do educating.
And
I would,
I agree. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dr.
no, please.
I agree that we have to do more in terms of education, and we're grateful for the opportunity to talk to you all today to try and share some of that education. I think for our colleagues in Congress of things that we could do, we've talked about access, and I know that's something that Dr. Blue focused a lot on. One of the barriers for access is that the patient support for ability to travel or having a caregiver come with you often is not covered in terms of the way that healthcare is reimbursed, or the government payers might have a contract to support. And so having a component of a therapy that is not safe to deliver everywhere, but is very safe and maybe curative to deliver at certain sites, to look into the ability for patients to travel. We do a lot of healthcare in the United States, kind of state by state, but the ability to travel and perhaps even cross state lines, I think, might be something that could expand access for CAR T cells.
I couldn't agree more. I would say, especially in large states, like I'm currently in the state of Florida, there's patients who have to come all the way to Tampa from the Panhandle and drive 6-7 hours to get this therapy. And so once the thing that we share with them how well and how wonderful this will work, the next thing they say is, well, where am I going to stay? What's going to happen with my husband? Who's going to help? And so I think some of those real tangible things could be definitely negotiated through their insurance payers to say, hey, we know that this is going to save money down the road. Laurie has not had treatment in almost 10 years. Imagine how much therapy and costs and things her insurance company have been saving by giving her this therapy. And so if we were to kind of say, hey, here's a slice of money that can be allocated for your travel, for your CAR T, to help make sure that you're there at one of these academic centers, I think that would be a fantastic and a big win.
So this topic actually ties in nicely to one of the questions in our queue, which is with travel and transportation being such a significant barrier or impediment for many patients, how do we bring CAR T cell therapy to the patients as opposed to the opposite?
I think we develop a cloning machine and clone Dr. Westin and make sure, I think honestly, I think that's exactly right though, right? Like Dr. Westin and we can't see every person with cancer, right? So we have to make sure that as these new therapies become more and more common, that we are able to get them into the communities where people are. And so that's just going to take time, right? And that will happen because there'll be more and more doctors who are getting trained on it. There used to be an old saying that it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And so sometimes what happens is that you have cancer doctors who have been treating the traditional ways of chemotherapy for 20, 30 years. Well, now this new wave of oncologists, they're being trained with CAR T as part of their initial training. So it's already on their mind. And so the landscape is going to change, and so that will just take some time.
Oh, I agree. And I would just close this by saying that this is not a therapy that should be given in every single clinic in every single county in the United States, just because of the way our healthcare is delivered. There are certain therapies that may be safe to be given, antibiotics or blood pressure medicine or other things. There are others that do have unique side effects, toxicities. And so we could get therapies closer to the patients, but it's not a situation with the current technology that it's going to be safe to do it in every place. But having it expand to be closer, so it's not those deserts that Dr. Blue showed of having to drive for 10 plus hours, that would be great. But I think for the time being, patients being able to travel is probably a more near-term solution than having the CAR T cell centers pick up and move. MD Anderson, I'm looking at across the way here. My center is pretty large and be pretty hard to move out to rural West Texas. That is not something that we're going to do overnight, but patients being able to travel and having support to do so, I think, is an earlier near-term solution. In the long run, we hope to have safer and less dangerous treatments, less side effects. That would be something that could scale to be done in small communities, in rural counties, in areas that don't have a lot of economic advantages to treat side effects. But for now, I think that the side effects of CAR T cells do mean it has to be done at a center that has expertise.
I also wanted to jump in and add that we're really in the infancy with CAR T. I did CAR T 7 years ago. That was antique days, right? And I was a guinea pig. They didn't have anything to use for my side effects. Now they prophylactically medicate patients. Patients are able to do this a lot of times outpatient, but there's also ongoing research and looking into such things as in vivo CAR T production, where the patient would actually be infused with the medications that were necessary to create CAR T cells within their body. So they wouldn't have to be removed, shipped out, manufactured, and shipped back. So we're really in the infancy, but based on the results, we really need more in the way of support for this research that's happening because these are groundbreaking. I'm currently supporting a patient with glioblastoma that just got CAR T in North Carolina in a clinical trial. I mean, this has ramifications for so many diseases beyond blood cancers that I just have to say we're just really in the beginning.
It's a great point. It's a great point indeed. Well, I can't believe it, but time has already expired for our program. And so I want to make sure that I am able to again thank all of our incredible speakers and all of you for joining us today. We hope that this discussion has helped to answer your questions and underscore the promise and value of CAR T cell therapy, as well as the urgent need to expand access. We're especially grateful to the Health Care Innovation Caucus and Representatives Kelly and Barra for their leadership and partnership in hosting today's briefing. We would also like to invite you to join us for a follow-up in-person event on Capitol Hill in October, where we will continue the conversation and explore policy solutions that can help bring CAR T cell therapy to more patients more quickly. Thank you again from everyone at the Lymphoma Research Foundation, and we look forward to seeing you in person this autumn.